Happy holidays, folks, and welcome to December, a brand new series on the channel where I'll be talking about every single DCEU film in release order leading up to the grand finale of Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. Now, I'll be going into immense spoilers throughout the course of talking about all of these movies, talking about what didn't work, what I thought did work, and my general feelings as a whole about every single film in this franchise. Some I liked, some I didn't. You'll have to watch and find out. Now, I will be uploading a video every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday throughout the days of December 4th and December 28th being the final day and the final installment, which will be me talking about Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. So, if that interests you, awesome. Kick back, relax, grab some popcorn, friend, loved one, whatever to watch this with, because today we're talking about... Before I really start tearing into Man of Steel, I need to talk about where I came from with this movie. So, I personally got into Superman watching the old DC animated TV series like Justice League Unlimited, Superman the animated series, and a lot of the DC animated movies before I got into the comics, as well as watching the live action show Smallville. So those really shaped my opinion on who Clark Kent and Superman should be as a character. So going into Man of Steel, it left me feeling very off about the movie, and my opinion fluctuated on the movie multiple times throughout the course of the years, between hating it when I first saw it, thinking the movie was fine when I saw it a few years later, and then having this middle ground opinion that I'm at right now. You see, I think this movie has a weird adaptation, a very unique adaptation, but a weird one nonetheless, of Superman, and that's because of the writers David S. Goyer and Christopher Nolan. They wrote the story for Man of Steel, as well as the story for another well-known franchise, the Dark Knight trilogy. You see, in the Dark Knight trilogy, they wrote it very much as what if Batman existed in real life. And you could tell that just from seeing the movie. Many of Batman's antagonists throughout the films don't have the same level of comic book schlockiness that they do in, well, the comics that they do in the film. Take Ra's al Ghul, for example. In the comics, Ra's al Ghul is an immortal ninja assassin that runs a world-domineering secret organization. In the movie, he's more of a terrorist that runs a secret organization that leaves the ambiguity that his figurehead is immortal. And the Joker isn't a man who fell into a vat of toxic acid that turned him into the clown prince of crime. He's just a crazy guy that wears clown makeup. And Bane, instead of being a luchador who juices on venom, is a man with a facial deformity that wears a mask and is just really strong. So you can see how all of those characters are grounded in realism and how that benefits the Dark Knight's characters, since Batman's characters are more based off of emotional trauma and how they relate to his trauma. Superman doesn't work that way, though, and I think that's why this movie feels off. They took their writing style from the Dark Knight trilogy and brought it over to Man of Steel, grounding the movie in a sense of realism, having people question their place in the universe with the fact that aliens that are both stronger and more intelligent than them exist. Clark figuring out what he should do with his abilities, wandering the world trying to find himself. A lot of allegories to Christianity with Jesus and Noah's Ark, and I'll talk about those when I start delving into the movie more, but that's what they did with this movie. And although it creates a unique take for Superman that I can't say I've seen anywhere else before, it makes him feel not like Superman. Superman's a very happy character. He's a chill guy that loves helping people, and this movie kind of takes that from him and makes him more brooding and gritty, and the movie as a whole just feels hurtful and bland. You can even tell that just from looking at the visuals. It's very dark and gray, and it doesn't feel as happy and colorful and bombastic as you see Superman in other pieces of media, and I personally don't really agree with that because I grew connected to him via the other media that I told you about. That's what shaped who Superman is for me, and seeing this drastic curve in the character just felt wrong. So, now that you know where I'm coming from with this movie and what influenced my opinion, let's get into it. The opening to Man of Steel starts with a 20-minute long sequence showcasing the fall of Krypton and the birth of Superman, as well as the establishment of the main antagonist Zod. I think this does way too much, and it needs to have just been a short, sweet, simple moment of Jor-El and Lara showing how much they love Clark before they send him off to Earth to his unknown future. I think that works the best for Superman's origin story, and yeah, sure, people have seen it before, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it, Jack. So we get this 20-minute long, boring-ass origin that I truly hate. And a lot of stuff in this doesn't make any sense, and a lot of the stuff could have been explained later, and is explained later in conversations that are more stimulating between Zod and Clark after Clark becomes Superman and Zod arrives on Earth. But nevertheless, It opens up, Clark is born, then Jor-El goes to talk to the Council of Krypton. He informs them that Krypton is going to explode in potentially a few weeks. I'll get back to that in a second. But after he tells them this, they respond like this.
Are you seriously suggesting that we evacuate the entire planet?
Yes! Now, I don't understand why they're responding like this, because with context, Kryptonians have had intergalactic travel for over 20,000 years, because later on in the movie, the ship that Clark finds that would be the Fortress of Solitude has been on Earth for over 20,000 years. So the fact that they've had space travel for tens of thousands of years, and they're just like, so you want us to evacuate the planet because it's going to blow up? Why would I ever do something so silly as that? You're being ridiculous. And for further context, Kryptonians are born from a thing called a codex. It has all the DNA of all the future Kryptonians that are going to be born. And they are assigned a life mandate of what they're supposed to do. So with all this context in mind, Jor-El was born to be a Kryptonian scientist. And his job is to inform them of shit like this. So why exactly are they reacting this way to the man who was literally born to tell them this kind of stuff? I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. That'd be like if ever since the day you were born, you were a butcher, and then I walked into your shop and you went to give me a fresh cut of bacon, and I went, nah, bruh, that cut ain't valid, bro. I can't eat that. That'd be stupid, right? And that's exactly what's happening here. It's a terrible way to showcase that Kryptonians are supposed to die. Making them incompetent to justify an entire species dying is terrible. I hate it so much. Anyway, you don't have time to really think about that unless you rewatch the movie as many times as I have. So, after they say that, Jor-El then just goes,
no. Everybody here is already dead. Give me control of the Codex.
Now, Kryptonians are all mandated to have a predestined life. But Jor-El and Lara broke that. They gave birth to Clark through natural means. They believe that Krypton needs to change and better itself to become new and fresh. So, if they can feel that way, why can't other Kryptonians feel that way? I don't think an entire species deserves to die just because a handful of them are stupid. Like the Council of Krypton and the antagonist of the film, Zod. They're so hard set on the Kryptonian ways of the past that they can't let it go. And I understand that's the juxtaposition between Clark being someone of free will, being able to do things differently, and Zod not being it. However, in this early portion of it, this whole thing is kind of like a Noah's Ark allegory, showcasing that Jor-El and Lara are like Noah and his family trying to escape the flood that's going to kill off humanity, and the Codex are all the innocent animals that don't have anything to do with humanity's sins. That's what's going on here, but this allegory doesn't work because all Kryptonians aren't equally in charge. There are a handful of Kryptonians that were born to be in charge that made stupid decisions. That doesn't mean everyone should die. I really hate this opening sequence. It's trying to be all philosophical and more than it needs to be, and it does way too much that it shouldn't, and I just can't stand it. But again, you don't have time to think about this. All this stuff is coming rapid pace, baby. We don't have time to stop unless you've seen this movie an absurd amount of times. So, you got Jor-El talking to the council. They refuse to evacuate everybody. He says they're stupid. Then Zod busts in to start a coup to take over the planet. And it's like, okay, a lot going on. I'm still focused. Let's keep going. Zod takes Jor-El captive because he doesn't want to work with him. Jor-El escapes, flies off on a weird dragon alien thing, steals the Codex, goes back, embeds it into Clark's DNA, which I didn't even know that was a thing, but whatever. Keep it moving. We don't have time, baby. We gotta keep going. So Clark now has the Codex inside of him. They launch him off into space. Zod busts in and then fights Jor-El. Jor-El dies. Then an army shows up and arrests Zod and his insurgents. Then all of a sudden, we're at a court trial where Zod and all of his insurgents are frozen and sent to the Phantom Zone after Zod goes, I will find him! Then they're all sent to the Phantom Zone. They get freed when Krypton explodes. Meanwhile, Clark is flying off to Earth. The problem I have with this, all of this happens way too flippin' fast. Because all this happens on like the same day, which contradicts Jor-El saying
Krypton's core is collapsing. We may only have a matter of weeks.
And so Zod being captured, put in a ship, frozen, and sent to the Phantom Zone is all happening while Clark is still leaving the atmosphere. But Clark was sent away when Zod went to fight Jor-El. So how fast did all of this stuff happen? It's crazy to me. Like, so much happens, but nothing happens because we learn about this stuff later. It's so unnecessary. This opening sequence feels like someone had an idea for a Krypton movie to make before the Superman movie, but weren't allowed to, so we have this 20-minute rushed, nonsensical sequence about Krypton before we get to the Superman movie that we came to see. So, that's all out of the way. Now we're on Earth. We see Clark. He's a fisherman dude who hears that people are going to die in an oil rig explosion. He goes, saves them, gets knocked out, and washes ashore in America. But something this movie does constantly, it goes flashback, present, flashback, present. That's just how the movie goes. So Clark saves people on the oil rig. He gets knocked out. Then we get a flashback. We see Clark as a kid, which I assume this is when his abilities started kicking in for the first time. His like X-ray vision and super hearing activate, and he has sensory overload and kind of has a panic attack. So I hate this teacher in this scene. She is so incompetent. She brings the entire class in front of the janitor's closet that Clark runs into to calm down. And she's yelling at Clark, telling him to get out of the closet. She's telling him that she called his mother to help get him out. But the whole class is there giggling and judging Clark for freaking out and having a panic attack. And even if Clark didn't have super hearing, they're standing in front of the wooden door that isn't soundproof. He can hear them. Lady, what is wrong with you? If there's one thing you should know about anyone having a panic attack, let alone someone who's a child having a panic attack, you don't crowd them and make fun of them. Why the hell would you do this, you terrible teacher? Anyway, Martha then shows up to talk to Clark. Excuse me, I skipped a point. I said earlier that I thought this was Clark's powers first kicking in, but he has his heat vision and lasers the door so the teacher can't open it. So he has his powers, but maybe this is the first time his super hearing and X-ray vision have kicked in for the first time. I don't really know. But then when Martha shows up to talk to him, it seems like she knows what to do because she tells Clark to focus in on her voice as if she knows he has super hearing. So like, is this the first time this has happened or isn't it? I don't know what's going on here. And the reason I bring this up is because in the series Superman and Lois, the way that Clark's son Jordan has to learn how to master his super hearing is by focusing in on what he specifically wants to hear on so he can tune out all the other information. And that's exactly what Martha's telling Clark to do here. So like, is this the first time it happened or isn't it? I don't know, movie, and this scene as a whole doesn't even matter. Nothing in this comes back later on in the movie to justify any of this. This just shows that Clark's life sucked as a little kid because he had weird superpowers that he didn't know how to control. Like, it's so unnecessary. Like, there's no lesson here that comes back later in the movie. It's just here. And I'm like, I bet. Thanks for like the 5 minutes you just wasted, movie. Yeah. So anyway, it flashes back to the present. Clark washes up on shore. He steals some clothes from a couple. He sees a school bus, and then it flashes back again. That's it. I don't know why this sequence was here at all. I feel like you could have cut out the school sequence, cut out this bus sequence, and then show a flashback of Clark at the bus, because this part actually has relevance to the movie and brings up the most controversial part of Man of Steel. But I'll get there in a second. So Clark is on a bus. I don't know if they're coming back from a field trip. They're going somewhere, whatever. It doesn't really matter. They're on a bus. The bus crashes into lake, river, whatever body of water this is, and Clark gets out, uses his powers, and lifts the bus out of the water, saving all of his classmates, and specifically the kid who was bullying him when he dives back into the water to pull him out because he had fallen out of the bus. So that's what happens there, and this results in the town knowing that Clark has superpowers. Obviously, all of the kids on the bus saw Clark lift the bus out of the water. There were civilians on the bridge that the bus fell off of that would see Clark lift the bus out of the water. So the people of Smallville are aware that Clark has some kind of abilities. And the following scene after he saves everyone is Martha and Jonathan talking to the bully and the mom of the bully about what happened. And this is when we get another allegory of Christianity, because the mom is saying that Clark's powers are divine intervention, that God bestowed him this gift, and blah, 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 blah. And I don't care. I don't like Superman being compared to Jesus in Christianity. I don't like it. I don't like it. Stop doing it. I know what's going to happen more in this movie, and it's going to make me mad every single time. So now, while Martha is dealing with the mom and the bully's son, then Jonathan goes outside to talk to Clark, and this is the most controversial scene in Man of Steel that people have argued about for a very long time. And I'm going to put my 2 cents in on it. So what happens is that Jonathan goes to reprimand Clark about saving the people on the bus. And this is the notorious scene where Jonathan tells Clark that he should kill the kids to keep his secret identity. And people have argued, I've even argued about it with one of my friends, about whether or not he's telling him this. My friend argued that Jonathan isn't telling Clark that he should have let the kids die. He's saying maybe, as in the sense that I don't know. Because the way the conversation goes is that he goes out to reprimand him, and he's telling him, like, you have to be more careful, showcasing your abilities, and then Clark rebuttals with this.
What was I supposed to do? Just let him die?
And then Jonathan rebuttals with this.
Maybe.
So I understand where my friend was coming from, saying that maybe Jonathan is saying that maybe in the sense that he doesn't know what to do. But that's not true. In the context of the conversation, Jonathan is saying that, yeah, maybe you should have let the kids die because it's going to cause a massive problem. After he says maybe, he goes into a long speech about the fact that humanity would change drastically if they found out that Clark existed, that he had these powers, and that he needs to hide himself so that the world doesn't find out and harm him and go through a crazy crisis of knowing the fact that extraterrestrials exist.
When the world finds out what you can do, it's going to change everything. Our beliefs, our notions of what it means to be human. You saw how Pete's mom reacted, right? She was scared of Clark.
So, like, him saying maybe isn't like, I don't know if you should have let them die. He was saying maybe you should have let them die because if the world finds out who you are, it's going to be a problem. And regardless of either way that you want to take this, this should never be a thing that Jonathan Kent says. There should never be a level of ambiguity on whether or not Clark should save people. Jonathan and Martha Kent give Clark his moral compass. They're the reason he becomes Superman. They're his Aunt May and Uncle Ben. They teach him the values of being a hero, that he should always help people no matter the cost. So telling him, regardless if you take it as he was saying, maybe, yeah, you should have killed them, or maybe, I don't know if you should have or not, is still wrong. Jonathan Kent should never tell Clark or give him the option to think he should have let people die to protect himself. I cannot express how stupid and irritated this makes me. He should never say anything like that. Clark should never consider letting people die. Clark Kent is a man who will do whatever it takes, even if it goes against his own best interests in a conflict. Do whatever it takes to save everyone. And now we're going to take a sidebar real quick and talk about a different Superman movie just to show this. In The Death of Superman, Clark is in one of his most dangerous fights that he's ever had to take part in. Fighting against Doomsday has brought him to the ringer. He's getting beaten to death, and in the middle of this grave battle, he sees a child in danger who's separated from his mother in the midst of all the chaos to go and get his game device that he had dropped. Clark takes the time out of this brutal fight to go and save this child, and this right here is just peak Superman, in my opinion.
Get back to your mom, son. Everything's going to be okay.
And I love that about Superman. So this idea that he should have let children, by the way, children, I need to make this clear, children die is absurd and should never have happened. But that's enough about that scene. Let's move on. We flash back to the present. And this bar sequence here where Clark is working at this dive bar and this woman starts getting harassed. Clark goes to, stand up to this guy and, hey, that guy kind of looks like Zack Snyder. He's not, but kind of looks like him, doesn't he? Anyway, so Clark goes to stand up to this guy. He's like, hey, listen, don't harass the lady. The guy tries to fight him. And when I first saw this movie, I thought this guy was going to try and beat the hell out of Clark and fail. And then, he was just going to keep hitting him. And, it just wasn't going to work, kind of like that scene from SpongeBob where the bully tried to beat him up, but nothing happened.
Do you have any sevens?
But no, he tries to push Clark, it fails, then he throws beer on him, and then Clark just walks away. And what makes this scene worse is that the start to the scene is that there's a couple of armed soldiers here who are working at a secret military base where they found the Kryptonian ship that would become the Fortress of Solitude for Clark. Hold it! I forgot to mention when I originally talked about this, but these soldiers don't do anything to break up the fight. They just sit there and enjoy it and laugh at the discourse that's happening. It's like, bro, you're a soldier. You're supposed to keep the peace of America. Do something. Worthless. What are my taxes for? And that's where he gets the information of where he should go. These guys suck at keeping things secret. Why would you go to a bar and talk about this publicly while it's filled with people? But anyway, so Clark overhears that before getting harassed by the guy and getting the beer thrown on him before walking out. And then he does this to his car, which, not cool. Superman wouldn't do that. I don't like that he does this. And my friend brought up the fact that, like, well, he's not Superman yet. He's still, like, learning to be Superman. Like, he hasn't fully come around. But, like, no, because later on in the movie, we're going to see that Clark learned lessons earlier in the movie that he already should know that he shouldn't do stuff like this. But anyway, right now he wrecks his car. He learns where to find the Fortress of Solitude. And this scene is just like, okay. It serves a purpose in the movie, but it's just like, whatever. So after the whole bar debacle, Clark leaves and goes to the military base where the Kryptonian ship is being unearthed and unfrozen from the ice. And I don't know exactly how Clark was able to sneak onto this base and get a job working here, but he did. He kind of does that a lot in this movie. He just bounces from job to job with his identity being hidden. I don't know how he pulls this off, but he just does, and they never explain it, so I just have to accept it. Anyway, this is when we're first introduced to Lois Lane, Clark Kent's love interest. And they do something with her character between her and Clark's relationship that I'm not really a fan of. That's more pressed in like a couple scenes later, so I'll wait till then to talk about it. So Lois shows up. She has some nice banter with like the military guys that I thought was pretty funny. And then she starts investigating the Kryptonian ship, taking pictures of it at night when the base is more or less quieted and shut down. She sees Clark sneaking onto the ship, follows him up there. Clark goes onto the ship, puts his Kryptonian key, which I didn't mention this earlier. The scene after Jonathan reprimands Clark earlier on in the movie, he takes him and shows him the pod that he fell in to Earth from, and he gives him the key, which is like a little Kryptonian hope symbol for the House of El, and that's what he has and uses to activate the ship that will be his Fortress of Solitude now in the present. So he's now safe because he started the ship, but Lois is not because she is an unauthorized guest. So she gets attacked by a Kryptonian security drone that's on the ship. She's bleeding internally from the damage. She broke her camera in the fall. Clark heat visions her wound closed. It hurts her. And isn't this such a beautiful moment between romantic partners as their first ever meeting?
This is gonna hurt.
Beautiful meet cute. Anyway, Lois is left outside of the ship. The ship flies away and lands somewhere in a different frozen tundra to be Clark's Fortress of Solitude. I've said that a lot in this video. Anyway, Lois then tries to report the story to Perry White, the owner and leader of the Daily Planet, that she found an alien, and Perry's like, you don't have a source, so she then leaks it by giving it to a guy that runs like a cryptid website, to like a cryptid extraterrestrial website, to leak it to the world. And Perry's upset by this, but that happens a little bit later. So now we go back and we see Clark investigating the Kryptonian ship. He meets the holographic ghost Jor-El that tells him all the background information about Zod and Krypton and all that kind of stuff, and gives him his Superman suit. And I personally don't really like it when Superman's suit is given to him via like Kryptonian science. I'm more of a fan when it's homemade because it just has more of an attachment to him on a personal level. Like, I'm a fan of when his cape is from Krypton. I don't remember which iteration it was, but there was an iteration of Superman where he got his cape as like a blanket he was wrapped in by his Kryptonian parents, and that became his cape. Meanwhile, the rest of his suit was homemade by Martha.
Did you make this?
From the only fabric I know that's been to outer space. You were swaddled in it when we found you.
I love that. That was probably like my favorite version of his suit that was made just from an emotional standpoint. So I'm not really a big fan of him just getting a Kryptonian suit from the ship that is made of like weird Kryptonian mesh, so it's like invulnerable and it won't like rip or tear or anything like that. Not really a fan of any of that. So he gets the suit, and then we get a scene that I love unapologetically. It is Clark flying for the first time. This scene rules. Henry Cavill looks like he was having a blast learning to fly in this scene, and it was awesome. Loved it. No critiques. We can keep going. So now we're introduced to Lois again. She's investigating Clark to figure out where he came from. She's backtracking all of his previous jobs and identities to locate where he lives. And she actually ends up finding him. She gets to Smallville, which she learns where the Kent farm is by talking to Clark's old bully that he saved the life of when he was a kid, which, like, dick move, bro. How dare you reveal the identity of your old alien buddy that saved your life that you used to bully? Not cool, bro. Do better. So she finds the Kent farm. She meets Martha. She talks to her a bit. Martha takes Lois to Jonathan Kent's grave. And then Clark shows up, talks to her for a bit, and Lois agrees to keep his secret identity. And then this segues into a flashback showcasing the death of Jonathan Kent. I am not a fan of what they do in this sequence for a very specific reason that I'll get to in a moment. But the scene starts off, Jonathan and Clark are in an argument with each other. Clark eventually lashes out because he's like a dumb teenager at this point in time, and he tells him that he's not his real dad. And then Jonathan kind of just lets it go. Clark tries to apologize, but then a tornado is approaching, so the Kent family and everyone else that's on the road start evacuating their vehicles to get under the overpass so that they won't be affected by the tornado. But then they realize that there are some people still stuck out there, so Jonathan goes back to help them. He helps a woman and her child escape, and then he tries to get their dog that's out there, telling Clark to stay behind and watch after Martha, which I think Clark should have been the one to just go out and do it, but that kind of goes into what's about to happen. And while Jonathan is saving their dog, he gets his foot crushed by a car, like breaking his ankle, spraining it, whatever it does. And then when the car lifts off, he tries to escape with the dog, but he has a massive limp and he can't make it. So Clark was about to run out and go save him, but Jonathan tells him no, and Clark watches his dad die, and he screams because his dad just died after having a massive fight with him. So here's the reason I have an issue with this. For starters, Clark could have just gone out there and saved everybody, because everyone in Smallville knows that Clark has superpowers already from when he saved all the kids on the bus when he was a kid. All the kids on the bus saw him, the bus driver saw him, the people on the bridge saw him, and the parents of the kids that saw what happened know about it from talking to their kids and all the other kids that were involved in it. So everyone in Smallville knows Clark has superpowers, and they don't say anything. So, like, Clark could have just saved his dad. Like, there was nothing stopping him from doing that. Second, if he did at this point, I'm not saying he does, because I don't know what Clark's abilities were at this point in time. If he had a super speed, he could have just saved him, because Clark can move almost as fast as the Flash. He could have saved him. But anyway, the main issue I have with this that drives me insane with this scene is the fact that Jonathan Kent dies of something that Clark could easily save him from. The same way that Batman's parents are killed by guns, influencing him to never want to use a gun, I don't think Jonathan Kent should die of something Clark could save him of. Or at the very least, he just shouldn't die at all, because there are interpretations of Superman where Jonathan Kent is just alive and perfectly fine, and Clark is still raised in the same way and becomes Superman. But if you are going to kill him, I think Jonathan Kent should always die of an illness or some kind of biological disease that Clark can't save him from. Clark is the Man of Steel. He's invincible. He has super strength, freeze breath, laser vision. He can fly super fast. Like, he has so many abilities that he can virtually save everyone and is basically indestructible, that his dad dying of an illness or a heart attack is something that he couldn't do anything about. There's nothing he could have done. It was something that Jonathan had to do on his own. I love that, because it shows Clark he can't always save everyone, but Clark still tries to save everyone regardless of the fact that he can't always save everyone. And I absolutely love that about his character, and I think Jonathan dying of a heart attack or illness or whatever works in benefit of that character arc. But Jonathan dying from being caught in a tornado is something Clark could have easily stopped and saved him from. So I really do not like what they do here. And I know people have argued that, yeah, well, Jonathan told him not to do it, he didn't want to reveal himself and all that kind of stuff, but I don't know, man. I still don't like that he could have just physically been able to do it. I wish that there was a way that he didn't have to, that Jonathan just died of a heart attack. I think that would have worked so much better, because Clark literally couldn't do anything. Even if he brought him to the hospital, Jonathan could have still just died. There was nothing he could have done in those kinds of situations, and I like that a lot more than what they do here. So after all this, Lois goes back to tell Perry that her investigation failed. She didn't learn anything about Clark or anything like that, and Perry doesn't buy it and says he's going to give her like a suspension from work, but he respects the fact that whatever she found, she decided that it was best not to post it publicly. Then we get a scene of Clark returning back. It's a nice wholesome scene where he meets Martha again, but it kind of always weirded me out watching the movie, because when Lois goes to the Kent farm, Martha takes Lois to Jonathan's grave, and Clark shows up. I assumed that was like after Clark went back and told Martha about it, but I guess not. I don't know where exactly that works out and everything, because it just feels off that, like, Clark knew that Lois was going to go find him, so then Martha brings her somewhere discreet so they can have a conversation, but then he comes back 2 scenes later, and it's, like, the first time that she's seen him. It's weird, but the scene as a whole is very wholesome, and I love it, and seeing Clark and Martha reunite is just, it's so heartwarming. I love it. And then we finally get the kickstart going. We're about halfway through the movie now, and Zod has returned. He sends his message out to the world being like, I'm here for Kal-El because I need him for blah, blah, blah reasons. He's like, hand him over. Otherwise, I'm going to resort to more drastic means. Then the military gets involved and they hunt down Lois because she sent out that article talking about Superman existing, and it was posted, and the guy that she gave it to from the cryptid alien site, one of the news saying like, oh yeah, this alien Lois Lane knows who he is, so like, the government needs to do something to find out and go after her. So then the FBI and the military come after Lois. They take her captive and they bring her to like a military base asking who the alien is, and then Clark decides he needs to go and reveal himself to the world. He puts on a Superman suit, shows up to the military, and then he offers to give himself up in custody as long as they set Lois Lane free. So he goes there. There's like a little cute interaction scene where Lois and Clark are talking, and she sees the S on his chest, and she's telling him like how that crest is an S on Earth while it means hope on Krypton. And then she's about to give him the name Superman, which, like, I hate when movies do this trope. Like, it's supposed to be cute and quirky that, like, the character's about to say the name of the person that it actually is, but then they get cut off right at the end. Like, it works in very, very limited circumstances. Like, I think in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Rise of the TMNT, I think that worked there because it was a joke that they never got to say that they were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then when they finally called themselves the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it was the most badass scene in the entire series, and I absolutely loved it. But like most movies, it's just like they get cut off at the end because it's like, you're a fan, bro. You know who they are, bro. Come on, we don't even need to say it, bro. You know who they are, bro, so we don't need to say it. Like, it's supposed to be like cool and quirky or whatever. It's not. Just say the name. I came here because I know who the superhero is and I want to see the movie about the superhero. Just say the name. I hate them cutting them off every time they do it. And I'm going to talk about this much later on in the series with a different movie that I'm jumping ahead. In the series. I'm not there yet. I've still got a while. I've got a lot of movies that I can enjoy before I get there. So they have the cute interaction. Then the military, they start questioning Clark through like, that plexiglass thing that's like one way. But Clark has X-ray vision, so he can see through it. And I really found this scene very funny. So after they go through that whole interaction, Clark's like, yeah, I'll give myself a Zod and blah, 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 blah. And then Zod's insurgent soldiers come down. And this is really weird to me. It happens specifically because they just want her in the rest of the movie. But when Zod's soldier comes down, she's like, yeah, we want Superman, but also we want Lois Lane. Why? Lois Lane has nothing to offer to them whatsoever. Like, at all. Clark has the codex inside of him. They have a machine that can root through his memories and find out where he lives. What do they need Lois for? Like, what's the point in that? It'd be different if Clark didn't reveal himself and Lois was taken captive because she knew where Clark lived, and then Clark revealed himself. But, like, Clark already agreed to go with them. Why do they want Lois? What does she offer to them? She has nothing to give them. But regardless, she needs to be in the plot, so she's there. Whatever, we're going to keep going. So they get taken to the Kryptonian ship. Clark gets sick because it has Kryptonian atmosphere on the ship, and he's used to Earth's atmosphere that makes him super strong. He blacks out. Lois is taken captive. But before that happens, he sneakily gives Lois his Kryptonian key, so if anything happens, she can use it to, like, escape or whatever. It works out in their favor, but, like, again, she wasn't supposed to be there. Like, she didn't need to be there. Like, they could have just killed her. They could have thrown her out into space, locked her in a cell that doesn't conveniently have a key slot on the inside of the cell, which, like, why is there a keyhole inside the cell? Like, why can you unlock the cell from inside the set. I'm sorry. I'm nitpicking and I'm jumping ahead. Anyway, so Clark blacks out on the ship. Zod enters his memory. He learns what Zod's true plan is, that he's going to destroy everyone on Earth and take it over and make New Krypton, which, like, I get at this point, he doesn't know that Kryptonians get stronger on Earth. But, like, later on in the movie, when he realizes Kryptonians get powers from being on Earth, he still plans on terraforming Earth and giving it Krypton's atmosphere. Why would you debuff yourself, bro? Like, if I went to a planet and I found out I got superpowers there, I'm not going to terraform the planet to be like Earth, where I have no powers and I'm weak as hell. What is wrong with you, Zod? Anyway, jumping ahead again, going back, whole dream sequence there with the skulls and everything. It's really cool. It's a nice looking shots. And Zod's like, ahaha, yeah, got you. Hacked your mind, bro. Inception, Christopher Nolan.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And then he learns where the ship is that Clark landed on, and then they leave and go to the Kent farm. So Lois, inside of her cell, she inputs the key that Clark gave her. It uploads ghost hologram Jor-El. He takes over the ship, helps Lois escape. Clark gains his powers back because he makes the atmosphere like Earth's atmosphere, which, like, Superman doesn't gain his strength from Earth's atmosphere. It's from the sun. So, like, how exactly did it being Earth's atmosphere give him his powers back when his powers come from absorbing sunlight? Anyway, Clark gets his powers back. He breaks free. Lois tries to escape through the means that Jor-El gave to her. Her escape pod gets damaged on her way out, so then Clark goes to save Lois. He has like a little T-pose moment where, you know, people have compared it to like Jesus on the cross, and just, if that was what they were going for, I don't need the Jesus allegory. Superman's not Jesus, so, like, just stop it. Please. Stop it. So, you know, then he flies after Lois. He saves her. Once Lois is safe, she ends up hailing a cop car to get herself to the Kent farm because Clark flies off because he can hear that Zod and his soldiers are attacking Martha at the Kent farm. So they're trying to find the codex, which they get angry at isn't inside of Clark's ship because they don't know that Jor-El embedded it inside of Clark's DNA at this point in time. So Clark flies in, he grabs Zod, starts beating the hell out of him because he attacked Martha. The other people in Zod's crew follow after them to Smallville, and I hate the amount of collateral damage that Clark causes in this movie. I know some people have tried to justify it, saying that, oh, well, this is his early days as Superman. He doesn't know not to cause collateral damage, but, like, he never learns throughout the course of the movie. He never tries to minimize damage throughout the movie, and we don't have a Man of Steel 2, 3, 4, whatever, to show him learning this lesson. So as it stands right now, Clark just causes massive collateral damage in this fight and in the fight later on. Like, it looks like an apocalyptic war zone by the final fight of this movie. But regardless, we'll get there when we get there. Clark attacks Zod. They're fighting, he beats him, he breaks his mask, and Zod learns about the powers that the Kryptonian gains on Earth, which, like, Clark, why would you tell him that? That's your trump card, brother. You're stronger, faster, and have more abilities than him. Why would you reveal your trump card to the enemy who can acquire the same ability as you? Like, I don't think that this should have happened. I think this should have happened in the final fight. I think that Zod should have mastered his Kryptonian powers in the final battle against Clark. Like, Clark could have broken his mask trying to give himself an edge, having Zod disoriented, and Zod ends up surviving it and honing the skills faster because of his Kryptonian military training. I think that would have been way more impactful than Zod learning the abilities now and then none of his Kryptonian army members use it. Like, Zod learns that they all have the ability to get superpowers and become just as strong as Clark. Why don't any of the others do it? Like, none of the others do it. They stay, like, weak. Like, no, not weak, because Kryptonians are still strong in this, which, like, I think it's weird. Like, I always thought Kryptonians were, like, as strong as normal humans when they were on Krypton, because they had a red sun in their atmosphere, but then when they came to Earth, that made them super strong. But like Kryptonians in this can still jump and have super strength. Besides, it's weird. It's just like they do it just so Clark has people to fight at this point in time, but it's very weird, and they don't really explain it very well. Like, I don't know if they have super suits or if Kryptonians just naturally had super strength. Like, they don't go into it very well, and it confuses me, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. But anyway, Zod gets the abilities, gets disoriented, so a ship comes down and evacuates them, and then Clark ends up fighting the two other people that were with Zod when he came to attack Martha. Clark's kind of getting dogged because he doesn't have formal training. They do, so although Clark is stronger than them in every aspect, they're better than him at fighting, so he's kind of struggling with this fight, and they're tearing apart Smallville while this is happening. And during the course of this fight, one of Zod's generals ends up saying this to Clark.
The fact that you possess a sense of morality, and we do not, gives us an evolutionary advantage.
Now, the fact that she says that kind of leaves the impression that this movie's trying to have a theme of having morality makes you stronger than not having one, because Clark is someone that believes in the value of life while the Kryptonians don't. They care more about their own species and superiority rather than the individual life. And I thought that this movie was going to showcase that Clark having a value of life and saving people would eventually make him stronger than the Kryptonians, and that he would prevail, good versus evil and all that. But that doesn't happen, given that at the end of the movie, Clark kills Zod, and all the other Kryptonians in the movie die because, like, jointly working with the military assault, they're all, like, blown up. So, like, just the fact that she criticizes Clark for being weak, for having a sense of morality, but the solution to this movie is that all of the Kryptonians die except for Clark throughout the course of the battle to save Earth, it kind of defeats the purpose. Like, Clark was supposed to be weak because he had a sense of morality, and this movie kind of proves that right, because at the end of the day, they kill all of the Kryptonians attacking Earth. None of them get sent back to the Phantom Zone or arrested in, like, a prison on Earth or anything like that. They're all killed. So, she was right. Clark having a sense of morality made him weak, and then killing all of them caused him to win and save the day. And I don't think that should have been the lesson. I think that's really weird. I think it was kind of just an oversight with the story, because, like, clearly, she's the antagonist, and she's saying this, and she's in the wrong, because Clark does save people throughout the course of this fight. It's like the one time in the movie he actually saves people. Saves, like, 2 soldiers, which, like, I would have preferred him to save normal civilians rather than soldiers, but, like, at least he did save a couple people in the course of this movie. It's nowhere near as cool as I've seen in other superhero movies, but whatever. He did save a couple people. I'll give it points for that. But she's clearly in the wrong, saying that you shouldn't care about saving lives because it makes you weaker. But he's not. He's the hero. He should be proven right, but he's proven wrong because they all die. It's super weird, and I think they kind of just overlooked that when writing the script and making the movie, because it's very off-putting. We're in the home stretch, folks. Gonna fast forward a little bit. So after the fight in Smallville, Clark beats them, they run off, and he gains the respect of the U.S. military, and people are starting to understand that he's a good guy. Now, Zod, on his ship, learns about the whole thing with the abilities properly, and he learns that the Codex is inside of Clark's DNA, so now he's like, okay, do we need Clark to be alive? Well, Kal-El, he calls him by his Kryptonian name, to be alive, and the scientist is like, nah, we don't. So they send down 2 world engines to terraform Earth to be the same atmosphere as Krypton, which would kill all of humanity on it. So Superman and the military come up with a plan in order to stop Zod and his ship. Clark is like, I'll go to one of the world engines and I'll destroy it by hand while you use the ship that I came in on and drop it as like a nuke to destroy the other one. So they go and do that. Clark gets weaker being near the world engine because it's, creating the atmosphere of Krypton, which, again, Superman is weak on Krypton because of the red sun, not because of the atmosphere. So, like, it's just weird that this is the thing that makes him weak. It's a nitpick from knowing Superman's lore and weaknesses from comics and other pieces of media, but it's not really that important. So Clark goes towards it. He gets weaker, and it's like a scene of him struggling to fly up and destroy it, but he eventually does. And on the military side, Lois is still with them for no apparent reason. And speaking of Lois, Lois took a cop car. Remember I mentioned earlier that Lois was dropped to safety by Clark? She got a cop car and went to the Kent farm and calls him Clark, Superman. She calls Superman Clark while he's in costume, while there's a cop behind her. What if that dude heard her? And like, why would you bring a cop there? That clearly gives away where Clark lives. Like, that's his home. That's where he grew up. What kind of idiotic journalist are you? Why would you do this, you imbecile? Anyway, back to where we just left off. She's still around in the movie working with the military to, like, save the day. But, like, girl, you're just a journalist. Like, what you think, you MJ from Spider-Man 2? Nah, dog, you ain't got the gat on you like her. Y'all built differently, okay? Alright? She got that dog in her. You got that little mouse in you, alright? Go sit down, Lois. You ain't built like that, alright? So, she ends up going with them for no apparent reason. They can't figure out how to activate Clark's ship because it's slightly askew from when Zod and his soldiers were messing with it, looking for the codex. So after a tense scene, they finally figure out how to align it properly. There's like a cool moment between the military guy that fought General Zod's other commander earlier in the movie, where she told him right before she was about to kill him that, you know,
a good death is its own reward.
She says that to him, and then, you know, when she's about to die, then he says this to her.
A good death is its own reward.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
And it's like, oh, okay, cool, little callback, all right. And then they end up crashing. Lois ends up flying out of the ship as it crashes into the world engine, destroying the second world engine. And thankfully, just in time, Clark flies up and saves her. So then, now we're at the climax of the movie, the final battle. Zod is heartbroken because there are no Kryptonians left. Well, Clark is a Kryptonian, but he doesn't respect him as one. He views him as the one that killed all of his people, and now he has nothing that he can do to save all of his people because he can't use the Codex without the Kryptonian ship because that was destroyed, and he can't, protect any of the surviving members because they're all dead, and he hates Clark. So the two of them get into a fight, which, as I mentioned earlier, look at Metropolis right now. It is mayhem, post-apocalyptic, destroyed mayhem. Like, what the hell, man? This is so absurd. Like, this is the most damage I've ever seen Superman cause in a fight ever. Like, he always causes collateral damage in a fight. That happens just because he's someone with super strength, like, beating the crap out of other people with super strength and special abilities. But, like, the amount of damage that this caused in this movie is absurd. Like, good lord, this is crazy. So, Zod and Clark start their final battle. It's going back and forth. Zod then takes off the armor and takes in all of the energy of the sun and is able to fly and do everything that Clark can. Two of them have a cool fight. It's directed pretty well. You can see some shoddy CGI moments in there, and you're like, oh man, that's 100% definitely like a CGI person, but it is what it is. I don't have a problem with it. It still looks pretty good, especially for what it's going for. So they go through, they're fighting throughout the course of the entire city, and then eventually Zod lands in front of a bunch of innocent civilians. And he puts Clark in a situation where Clark either has to kill him to save the people of Earth or let the people of Earth die in order to spare him and try and incapacitate him. And yes, like people have said, many before me, Clark could have just flown away. Like, Clark had multiple options aside from breaking Zod's neck, because Zod is just lasering towards the people and Clark's trying to stop him, but he can't pull him away. Like, Clark could have broken the floor. He could have flown away. Or I think Superman is the kind of person who would even put his hands in front of Zod's eyes and like burn his hands as opposed to letting him shoot the people. But killing Zod just feels wrong to me. And again, with what I mentioned earlier about this whole thing that morality makes you weaker, this proves it right. Clark couldn't beat Zod with his morality. He ended up killing him. And I don't think that should have been proven right. Superman versus the Elite. In this movie, Manchester Black forms a team called the Elite. They are teaching the world that superpowered individuals should take more action in politics and the events of the world, saying they should kill supervillains instead of locking them away and letting them escape again, saying they should kill dictators and evil politicians to allow the world to be a better place. And Clark has old-fashioned values, saying you shouldn't overstep your boundaries, you should just focus on helping people when they need it. You shouldn't butt your nose into politics and take away people's free will by being basically like Kira from Death Note, saying you'll kill bad people if they do bad things. So this movie culminates at the ending with Clark having to fight the elite, basically having both their ideals clash, having this punk British man saying that, anarchy is a better way, that they should use violence to shape the world into a better place, and Clark saying to have faith in humanity and not use violence and kill people. The two of them fight, and Clark could easily win the fight if he would just kill the elite, but that's not what he wants to do. That's not who he is as a person. He doesn't kill. And then this happens.
Wait!
Holy shit. Where did he go? Where did he freaking go?
Orbit. If you had super hearing, any second you'd hear the pop.
And this moment shook me the first time that I saw it. Clark starts offing the members of the elite one by one in the most menacing scene that I've probably seen for Superman, outside of movies where he's like actually evil and does kill people, but never mind that. So Clark just offs them one by one. He has Manchester Black freaking out, only to find out he didn't actually kill any of them. He actually just defeated and incapacitated every single member of the elite, making it seem like he killed all of them to show the world that killing isn't the right thing to do. Clark is the kind of person who will pull a hat trick out of his ass to prove that killing is wrong. That's what he did when he fought the elite. He beat every single one of them without killing them, just to prove that you don't need to kill to win and do the right thing. So the fact that Clark just folds right here and kills Zod, I'm not a fan of it. I don't think it was his last resort. I think he could have done something else. Clark's last resort, which I will talk more about this next time when I'm talking about the Death of Superman and the Batman v Superman video, but in the Death of Superman movie, Clark is fighting Doomsday. When he goes into that fight, Wonder Woman tells him that Doomsday is a monster that needs him to fight him to the death, that he can't just beat him like he does every other villain. Clark still goes into this fight trying to incapacitate Doomsday because he doesn't kill people. He only decides to kill Doomsday at the very end of the fight where he has run out of complete options. He's beaten to hell, he's bleeding, he's understood. I can't beat him the way I would beat normal people. I have to kill him, and that's when he decides to do it. So Clark is nowhere near that situation in this movie, so I feel like he could have done more to avoid killing them. And I really believe he should have defeated Zod without killing him, especially since it seemed like the theme of this movie is a whole sense of morality, making Clark a better person without being like the other Kryptonians. Him killing makes him like the rest of the Kryptonians. I don't like that one bit. But despite all of that, this movie ends really cool. I really like the ending of this movie because it feels like the Superman movie I wanted from the start. Clark drops a drone off at the soldier who I heard was supposed to be Martian Manhunter at one point. You can, fact check me on that, but I heard that this general was supposed to end up being Martian Manhunter in future installments of the DCEU if it got to continue in the proper format that it was supposed to. But nevertheless, he, has this cute interaction with them where he's like, I'm from Kansas, that's as American as it gets, General, you can trust me. I like that a lot. And then the movie ends with him talking to Martha, saying that he's figured out what he wants to do with his life, and it shows him gearing up to go to the Daily Planet. He gets his little spiffy, nerdy jacket on. He puts on the big glasses so no one knows that he's Superman. And then he meets Lois, and they have this cute interaction where she welcomes him to Earth and all of that. And it's super cute. I really like it. It's just such a wholesome way to end the movie. It warms my heart. Seriously, look at this and tell me it's not cute.
Welcome to the planet.
Glad to be here, Lois.
Come on, you can't tell me it's not cute. This is a really good way to end the movie. Especially with the music and everything like that, kicking in at the end. That's great. I love it so much. It's an awesome end to the movie. All in all, Man of Steel, it's a very conflicting movie. As you've heard, I didn't like a lot of this movie just because of all the things that I feel were wrong with the characterization of Superman and like some of the writing mistakes and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, I think you could enjoy Man of Steel watching it either or side. Like, if you can move past your knowledge of Superman, you'll probably like the movie. And if you're someone who doesn't know anything about Superman, watch this movie knowing that he's not going to act like this like any other adaptation of Superman that you see. So it's going to be like tonal whiplash if you like getting into Superman based off of this movie alone. But yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about Man of Steel. Tell me what you guys feel about it. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you want to yell at me? Or whatever the hell it is. Comment it down below. Yell at me on Twitter. I have my socials down there as well. And hopefully you'll tune in next week for the next installment in this December franchise. So, with that being said, I am the innocent villain. Remember, folks, you're innocent until proven villainous, and I will most definitely catch you next time.